Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and we are the IB English guys. Today we're going to unleash a 4-video series where we're going to look at how to read a prose fiction passage.
Mr. Giles, that sounds like IB literature. Can you tell me why this is for both IB literature and Langlit?
Yeah, first of all, it's language and literature. So all of these courses, both courses, have literature as its basis. It's very important, and I feel like literary text, a prose fiction text, is really the cornerstone of so much of what we do in both courses.
That's going to show up in both courses. Why don't you give us a quick preview, Mr. Giles, of what we're going to do today in video 1 of our series?
Yeah, we're going to first offer you a framework, a protocol for how you can read a prose fiction passage. We think this is really useful to take it apart. Then we're going to apply that particular framework to a sample passage from a novel that we really love.
Yeah, after that, we're going to go ahead and discuss that passage, and then we're going to apply that mnemonic and try to arrive at some big ideas that we could possibly write about.
That's right. That's good.
Okay, now, of course, folks, before we start getting into the mnemonic, we really believe in a 3-tier reading process. Of course, your first reading, you're not going to have a pen in your hand. And today, Mr. Giles and I will read that passage for you so you can follow along. Then the second reading, which you would do on your own, you would be looking for some big ideas. You'd be writing notes in the margin, and then follow that up with a third reading where you're looking for the literary craft or other features that help bring those ideas to life. Yeah. All right, Giles, we're going to get into the mnemonic now.
So we used a framework that's often used in many classes. It's not our original idea, this idea of SCASNI, but we've altered it somewhat. And so we are now calling it SCASNI because we've added an element that we think is really useful.
Well, SCASNI, Mr. Giles, you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of the coral again.
Ooh, bringing out the coral.
And I've realized, Mr. Giles, that the sea coral always settles near islands.
Ooh, I like that. Sea coral always settles near islands.
You should like it. It's yours. Okay, so let's go through this mnemonic and talk about why we think this is helpful. The S of this mnemonic stands for setting. Giles, go.
Yeah, the setting is about the description. We want to think about, again, how the setting contributes to the story. We also want to think about the relationship of the setting to the characters, and think of maybe a little bit about morals and values that are in the setting.
That's fantastic. The C, of course, is for our characters. And this is when you want to think about, what is the character saying? What is the character thinking? What are the emotions of the character? How does the character look? Just really trying to fill out all of that information about that particular character or characters in your passage. Moving to the A.
Yeah, the A stands for action. This is again the plot. What are the characters doing? What is happening in this passage? What conflicts emerge in the passage? Is there a climax? Is there some kind of shift? So we want to think about the action, what's happening.
And that will take us to S of our mnemonic, which is style. This is where you're really exploring literary craft. You're looking at similes and metaphors and personification. Maybe you're looking at dialogue, point of view, diction. It could be anything. Sorry, not point of view, that's somewhere else. But it could be any foreshadowing. Any of these literary elements might be a good time to explore while you're looking at style.
Yeah, that's great. N is our special edition, and we want to thank one of our colleagues, Lisa, who pointed out that this is very important. This is the narrative technique. We want to think about the narrative point of view. We want to think about it. Is it third person limited? Is it third person omniscient? Is it a first person narrator? Does the narrator have some kind of bias that's shaping our thinking and our reading? What can we say about that narrative point of view?
Yeah, and folks, once you've gone through all those elements, you've looked at the setting, the characters, the actions, the craft, the action. Once you've done that, then you get to the ideas. You take all of those highlights, you say, what is this author communicating through this passage?
Okay, great. Now we have chosen a literary passage that we really like, and we want to quickly apply that mnemonic SCASNI to this particular passage. This is from The God of Small Things, and we're going to do a quick read aloud of this text. You're welcome to pause the video and read it yourself. It's linked down below, or you can follow along with us as we read the passage to you.
Hit it, Giles.
Here we go. It was past midnight. The river had risen, its water quick and black, snaking towards the open sea, carrying with it cloudy night skies, a whole palm frond, part of a thatched fence, and other gifts the wind had given it.
In a while, the rain slowed to a drizzle and then stopped. The breeze shook water from the trees, and for a while it rained only under trees, where shelter had once been.
A weak, watery moon filtered through the clouds and revealed a young man sitting on the topmost of 13 stone steps that led into the water. He was very still, very wet, very young. In a while he stood up and took off the white moondew he was wearing, squeezed the water from it, and twisted it around his head like a turban. Naked now, he walked down the 13 stone steps into the water and further until the river was chest high. Then he began to swim with easy, powerful strokes, striking out towards where the current was swift and certain, where the really deep began. The moonlit river fell from his swimming arms like sleeves of silver. It took him only a few minutes to make the crossing. When he reached the other side, he emerged gleaming and pulled himself ashore, black as the night that surrounded him, black as the water he had crossed.
He stepped onto the path that led through the swamp to the history house. He left no ripples in the water, no footprints on the shore. He held his mundo spread above his head to dry. The wind lifted it like a sail. He was suddenly happy. Things will get worse, he thought to himself, then better. He was walking swiftly now toward the heart of darkness, as lonely as a wolf, the god of loss, the god of small things, naked, but for his nail polish.
All right. Nice.
Love Arundhati Roy.
Love it. Okay, we're going to quickly apply the acronym SCASNI to this, and we've going to use some different colors to highlight a few of those aspects for us to talk about. And we're just going to take turns and talk about a few of the things we notice at trying to arrive at an interpretation of this text and show a deeper understanding. So S stands for setting. Again, this is part of our C Choral acronym. The setting is important. We notice it's midnight. We see also the setting of the river, and the river is quite powerful. It's quite, it's taking with it different, fences and different aspects. We also see that the rain had just stopped, and I think this creates a really serene and beautiful atmosphere with the moon and the rain stopping. It's quite mystical and important. We also see the stone steps as part of the setting. We see a history house on the other side of the river and a path that's leading towards the history house.
Yeah, now that you've done such a beautiful job of identifying the setting, Mr. Giles, let's figure out who's in this setting, okay? And we see it's a young man. We see that he's very still, but he's wet. He's just come out of the river, and he's taken off his white mundu, and now he's naked. Okay, and I find that he's gleaming. He's actually shining in the moonlight, which is actually quite interesting. It's almost like as you said, very serene, but it's almost like he's a godlike figure in this moment.
Great.
We scroll down and we get some insight from our narrator into the thoughts. It says he was suddenly happy. So whatever this character has just done has caused him to feel some sense of happiness and bliss. And then he's very pensive at the end. He says things will get worse, but then better. So we have a thinking character who's just emerged from the river, perhaps through some sort of cleansing process, and he's ready to take some action and make a move.
Yeah, that's great. And the action is, again, what's happening in this passage. And we see in this passage that this young man is literally swimming across the river. And I think this is really important. If you want to look for a conflict, it's really the conflict of this young man with this powerful river that is quite dangerous. We notice that he's going into the really deep. And again, thinking about swimming across a river, that is quite a scary thing, especially one with a swift current. And then he emerges on the other side. So it's a very simple plot, but I think it's quite a symbolic one and an interesting one.
Yeah, and then when you start, now that we're making some meaning of the passage, we can start to explore the craft, Mr. Giles. And I can't help but notice all that rich imagery in that opening paragraph where, the narrator really gives us a great view of what the scene looks like. As we moved further down the passage, we see the clear symbol of the turban. And we know that has religious connotations, especially in our context where we are. And we understand the significance, and we can talk about that. Maybe the writer would like to talk about this capitalization of really deep. That's a really clear stylistic choice that the author has made. Why is that capitalized, and how can we talk about that? Again, as we go through the passage, we see similes, really precise diction that show the character gleaming sort of in a backdrop of darkness. And I think as we get towards the end, we see some really clever syntactical choices by the author. We see a lot of short sentences toward the end. And actually, if you're familiar with this text, we understand that the character is almost very surreptitious in the way he's going through this moment, leaving no ripples in the water, no footprints behind. And then again, going back to that religious imagery, those religious connotations of the text, he is labeled as the God of loss, the God of small things by our third-person omniscient narrator.
Yeah, that's great. Well said. I think there's so much to talk about that symbolic act of crossing the river and what we could do with that and how that's so important. So very metaphorical and figurative. Now we want to think about the N in our mnemonic. And again, this is the narrative point of view. And this is thinking about how this is narrated and what we can say about that. So in this case, we see that it's written in the third person. We know it's written about this character, the young man, but I would argue that it's an omniscient narrator. The narrator is looking at this young man and telling us how he's thinking, but it's also making some comments about him. And again, it's I think conveying a lot of sympathy for him, as it says he left no ripples in the water, no footprints on the shore. And it's also acknowledging that he is the God of small things. And again, this is to me a really important thing to talk about.
Our narrator is elevating this character in status through this moment that they've crafted for us.
That's right.
All right, Giles, that takes us to the end of ideas. Okay, so we've done a lot of work here. What's a big idea you see in this passage? Because ultimately, that's what we need to communicate. What are the ideas?
Yeah, I think one idea is this sort of idea of spiritual purification. We see the 13 steps going down the steps. We see the turban. We see, again, him being a godlike figure at the end. So this idea of going into the river and purifying himself would be something I might want to talk about.
Yeah, and again, building on that idea, of course, water is seen throughout literature as a cleansing mechanism, and this character has started on one side, crossed the water, emerged naked, dripping wet. I mean, some sort of serious purification of mind, body, or soul has happened within our character. I think that he is happy about this transformation. He understands it's challenging, but I think maybe the idea that, if you can overcome some of these societal challenges, you do have a chance to emerge victorious on the other side.
Yeah, and you mentioned that another idea, this idea of societal challenges, and you think about there's an element of danger in this passage as well. Like this character is swimming across this dangerous river, and we have all the elements of danger that are there for us to think about, even references to history and the heart of darkness. This is quite ominous passage.
It's
too.
ominous, Mr. Giles, but he's moving with easy, powerful strokes. Our character is incredibly motivated to overturn whatever conflict has emerged in his life. So he's going with a sense of purpose, with a sense of confidence, and trying to overcome something that's in the really deep.
All by himself. So a lot of power. So I think again, this acronym is there for us to use to try to make meaning and interpret the passage so that we can again think about arriving at a good interpretation. I think we're well on our way.
Yeah, folks, videos 2, 3, and 4 of this series, we're going to go beyond this mnemonic, this acronym, and we're going to present you with another text, quickly deconstruct it, and then we're going to get to the writing of how to articulate our ideas and our thoughtful, insightful conclusions that we draw from the text.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, folks, so we hope you're going to come back and watch those with us. We're looking forward to making them because we are here for you. We want you to excel in the course, and we believe that these videos are getting you on the right pathway. So thank you for watching, and have a great day.
Right on.